Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed the flight on AZORES Airlines from Oakland to TER a couple weeks ago in business class. Today I'm posting the reverse of that journey, and this one's actually originating in Lisbon through TER to Oakland. You can see on the board here in Lisbon they have our destination as Oakland via TER. So we boarded here in the international part of Lisbon's airport, which is roped off, and you have to go through customs in order to get through it, some sort of passport control. And basically every flight here is TAP Air Portugal, except for our flight and a couple Brazilian airlines. Now, one thing to mention is they actually did make me gate check my bag on this. I've carried this bag on a million times, but I could not convince the gate agent that it was small enough to fit in the overhead bin. So I did have to gate check it, which was somewhat of a bummer, but keep that in mind, I guess, if you're traveling in economy with AZORES Airlines. Now what that means is they take your bag and they drop it down this big slide right here down to the airplane. Now, AZORES Airlines usually only flies narrow bodies or turboprop airplanes. This is their only wide body airplane they fly, and so they must not be used to boarding it because they didn't have any boarding groups or anything. They just called boarding for the flight, all passengers, and the line went all the way through the terminal, and we had to be patient in that jet bridge because it did take a while. Now on our way to our seat, we walk past the aft business class cabin, which if you haven't seen the business class video, go ahead and check that out. It is up on my channel. And then there's this intimate 2 rows of economy, which actually costs the same as normal economy. It's just that those seats go a little bit sooner. And for the flight from Lisbon to TER, I actually got a seat on an exit row, and there's no bulkhead in front of me, so I do have a bunch of room. The only problem you'll see here is that there's no real window. It's kind of behind your head. Now luckily nobody sat next to me, so I could move over if I wanted to, but the slide from the door really did take up all my leg room here. And then to see out the window, you'll see I really do have to crane my head to look behind me. Each seat in economy is supplied with a USB power charging port. There is no universal charger like there is in economy. However, you'll see on my seat here, my USB is kind of just loose and dangling here, but gets the job done at least. Now we actually have the same cloud pillow, as they call it, and the same blanket that they gave us in business class, which is really nothing to write home about. There's nothing all that special about it, but if you do want to sleep, it gets the job done, I guess. Now this is a budget flight and operated by a budget airline, and so we need to keep that in mind when we're talking about the pillows and the blankets and stuff, as well as the seats. The seat's about as comfortable as sitting on a rock, so just keep that in mind if you're taking this long haul. Now as we push back here, you can see that basically as far as the eye can see, it's all TAP Air Portugal, except for that single United 787, which is actually what I flew in on the night before from Newark. Now yes, 90% of the airplanes here at Lisbon are TAP Air Portugal, but because of the close relationship between Portugal and Brazil, you'll also see a ton of Brazilian airlines. For some of those, they design their long haul routes specifically for the Brazil to Portugal runs. now that we're up in the air, time to take a look at the seat controls and what we've got here. You'll see on the emergency exit row the light and the flight attendant call on the seat. You've got the USB charging port on the arm for the entertainment system, which I did try and get up with one hand to my best abilities, and I could not do it, so I did have to put the camera down and get it started. Now it also gets caught on your leg because it does tuck behind your feet, so I had to move my feet out of the way to lift the arm up, and my charging cable got caught on it, and then I tried to rotate the screen and there was all kinds of glare, so it took me a while to get it figured out. Now, unfortunately, the glare is something that I never really figured out, but once I did kind of get used to it, I was able to watch some of the stuff they had available to them, which was not a whole lot. They had a few movies, they had a few TV shows, but the TV shows were just random episodes here and there. There was no way for you to be fully invested in it. So not a great in-flight entertainment system, I must say. Now the flight from Lisbon to TER is only a couple hours, so it is kind of nice that they come around with these snack boxes and this cup of juice that I have to say might be the smallest cup of juice I've ever got. You can see it in my hand here. It's basically about the height of my 4 fingers, and it was like taking a large shot glass of juice. But the snack box did have some good stuff to keep me tied over for the couple hours, some AZORES cookies, and a nice ham and cheese sandwich to go along with it.
Chamamos a sua atenção para o facto de só ser permitido fumar no terminal do aeroporto nas áreas designadas por este piloto. Uma estadia na terceira ou uma continuação da sua viagem para Oakland.
Now, for those of you that watched my Oakland to TER video on this aircraft, you'll know that it does not fit over by the main terminal, so we actually have to taxi over to a hard stand on the military side of the airport. So we've got a whole long taxi all the way back the entire length of the runway. Once we parked, the stairs pulled up, they raised the doors, and we were able to disembark from the aircraft, and we got on our buses over to the main terminal. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is that this flight is considered an international flight, even if you are just traveling from Lisbon to TER. So you are required to go through passport control in order to leave the airport. If you are transitioning to Oakland, they will allow you to just head upstairs to a secured gate area where you don't leave security or anything like that. However, I was having trouble getting my boarding pass for the second flight, and so in order to get that, I did have to leave customs in order to go up to the ticket counters. Well, the nice thing, I guess, about having to go get a boarding pass is that I do get to walk around this airport a little bit and see what it has to offer. So from here, you can see down low, you've got your arrivals area where we just walked out. And if you come up the stairs, there's also a ramp. The upper level to the left side is all the departures and the departure hall and everything. So we'll head over there in just a second here to go to the ticket counter, back to security, and back to the gate. Now, I will show you that there is a restaurant in the airport before and after security, but in addition to that, there's also the snack bar right across the street from the airport, And while I didn't have time to eat there this time, it did look like it had some good offerings. So in the future, if I'm ever back here, I definitely would go check that out. So once we get inside Lisbon Airport's terminal, you notice that TAP Air Portugal gets a couple lanes, Ryanair gets a couple lanes, but the majority of it is dedicated strictly to AZORES Airlines, and they break that down into half for the inter-island flights on SATA, and then the dedicated lines specifically for the international flight going either to Oakland or Lisbon, depending on which direction the flight is headed. So Lajes Field is the restaurant. You can see they have a lounge here where you can hang out before you get on the flight. In addition to that, right next to it is their actual restaurant. This is all before security. So if you are traveling with someone who wants to eat before they go through security, or maybe you're leaving people behind on the island, you can grab a bite to eat here before you pass through customs and immigration. Now the security here is much like any other airport security. However, they were insanely strict about only one person at a time being invited up to the security belts to load up their items. Now once through security, you can see another Lajes Field restaurant here, and in addition I'll show you there's a couple shops where you can get little trinkets and souvenirs for those to bring home from the island. So when you go through security, this whole gate section from gates 1 through 4 is all the inter-island flights and domestic flights operating out of Lajes Field in TER. For those of you traveling on the international flights to either Lisbon or Oakland, there's actually a secured gate area that you have to pass through. Now if you remember when we got off the airplane, some people were able to just head upstairs and that takes you directly into that area. For us, we actually have to pass through one more level of passport control in order to get there. They do only have the one gate controlled by passport control. Not an issue, however, because if you look here at the list, there is the one flight to Lisbon operated by TAP Air Portugal that uses that gate. Other than that though, it's just the Oakland flight. Everything else is inter-island. So we're going to pass by the inter-island gates here and head off to our passport control so we can head over to Oakland. Now through passport control, we are in our own controlled gate area. Now it's a pretty small area because it usually only operates one flight at a time. However, there is still another Lajes Field restaurant here, so I did get some stuff so we can check that out and also have some snacks to eat on the airplane as well. But in the meantime, we're just going to kind of hang out here. We've got about another 30 minutes till boarding. Now SATA AZORES uses pretty much only the Dash 8s for their inter-island flights, and they were coming in and out every about 20 minutes, so I was watching them get all the passengers off, on, leave, and then watch a new one pull in. Meanwhile, I sat here with my food and my snacks here for the airplane while I waited for them to call for our plane for boarding. Now, just like in Lisbon, they called all passengers for boarding all at one time, and you can see here, this super small area had a line wrapping basically around the entire thing. Now, just like when we got off the airplane, we're going to hop on our bus, take it right back out to the hard stand where our airplane's sitting at. Now, as we pull up, one thing that I will say I did notice that's kind of interesting is going from Oakland to TER transiting to Lisbon, and vice versa today going Lisbon to TER and transiting to Oakland. The crews are different on both of those flights. It seems like the crews they use from Lisbon to TER stay in the Europe area, and the rest of the crews that are designated for international travel take over for the flight to Oakland. Now, because of boarding everyone at the same time and having multiple buses making trips at the same time, there was a huge backup to actually get on board the airplane. Never a problem though when we're boarding by hardstand. It's always fun to walk around the airplane and just see what this new airplane has to offer, especially when it's something unfamiliar like this new airline. And now we're finally on board and we're heading towards the back of the airplane. We're sitting in economy on this flight, but we're towards the back instead of being in the exit row. So their economy is set up in a 242. It's all the same economy seats throughout. You just pay a little bit more to book a seat towards the front of the airplane in a preferred spot. But here we are in row 39. We're going to take our seat and settle down for the flight. Now, legroom on the seats is not great. I actually would compare it to that of Allegiant Airlines, and the seats actually remind me of Allegiant Airlines as well, so keep that in mind when you're sitting on this flight for about 12 hours. Now, there's our reflective screens again. You can see me and everyone around me reflecting in it, but luckily I had the seat next to me available, so I was able to move my bag over and stretch out a little bit, but you can see how kind of cramped I am here with my feet a little bit tangled up. Underneath the seat, you'd think you could put your backpack under there. However, there is life jackets underneath the seat, and so it's reducing the ability to actually put a bag underneath the seat. So I guess keep that in mind if you're planning on sleeping on this flight. With the boarding doors closed, we actually continued to sit here for almost an hour. Came to find out after we landed, we were actually overloaded and they had to unload all of our cargo and reload it a little bit differently and actually leave some of the cargo and some of the passengers' bags behind. Finally, 45 minutes after our departure time, the baggage door was shutting and we thought we were all good to go until we noticed another problem, and that's that the plane's air conditioning system was actually causing multiple leaks in the airplane with all the humidity in the area. Luckily, once we did start moving, we were only about 100 feet from the runway, so our taxi was short and we were off the ground right away. 45 minutes into the flight, basically as soon as we hit cruise, they came around with their first food offering, which was, I went with the carne asada option. They also had a chicken option. Came with a bread roll, a nice chocolate cake, and a salad, I guess if you want to call it that. Inside the carne asada, didn't seem to be carne asada after all, though it did actually look like I ended up getting chicken, and they just mislabeled it. Still good, still worked. It also came with mashed potatoes and peas and carrots, but didn't seem to be carne asada in my opinion. Now after that, I took a nice long nap, and by the time I woke up, we were actually already over the United States. Now that I was awake, I was desperate to try and figure out how far we actually were towards Oakland. So luckily I went to the seatback TV and used their seatback map feature. However, when I clicked on the seatback map feature, all it did was start flashing at me, and it never actually gave me a map of any kind. So this is when it was time to get creative. Luckily, before the flight, I was taking a look at the route that we were going to use, and so I just plugged that into my ForeFlight, and that was my new map from now on. Now, I mentioned the seatback TV's entertainment system did not have a lot of options. I do want to take a second. I'll just scroll through it all, and it really only takes about 45 seconds to get through all the movies, TV shows, music, and everything. So, do with that information as you will, I guess. And now seemed like a perfect time to use my snacks I got from the airport. I got some nice prosciutto ruffles from the airport, some mini croissants with vanilla stuffing, ham and cheese sandwich, a Dr. Pepper, and a passion fruit Fanta. Pretty good when I was pretty hungry actually waking up after my nap. Well, now that we're close to landing in Oakland, I figured I'd take a second to show you the cabin on board this airplane in economy. Now, it's a normal 767 economy setup in the 242, except for a few rows by the galley, where the middle section is 3 seats instead of 4 seats. But it made for a great room for people to get up and talk. Seems like a pretty close-knit community of Azoreans in California. And then, just past the restrooms in the galley in the middle, you'll see that 2-row economy that I showed you on the way in. On the other side of the curtain is the business class cabin that we saw on the flight out to the Azores. And now a pretty nice feature they offer on AZORES Airlines, which is actually called My Extra Seat, where you can reserve an empty seat next to you, which worked pretty well considering it was a 242 setup. So I had basically my entire section to myself, so I was able to use my USB charging port and my TV, as well as using the charging port and TV for the screen next to me, which actually worked out because the headset jack on my seatback TV wasn't working. So it worked out for me and gave me a little bit more room to stretch out and sleep as well. Now, I do have to say I was kind of surprised when a little over an hour before landing I saw the attendants actually get up with one more snack and beverage service before landing. Now, the offering was actually the exact same as it was from the flight from Lisbon to TER, where they gave us the same snack box and the same drink offering. And the snack box actually contained the exact same cookies and the exact same sandwich, but can't complain, we were about an hour from landing and it timed me over until then.
bem-vindos aos Estados Unidos da América. Acabamos de aterrar no aeroporto internacional de Oakland. São neste momento 17 horas e 58 minutos, hora local. Pedimos que se conservem sentados com os cintos de segurança apertados até que o sinal de apertar cintos esteja desligado e o avião se encontre completamente imobilizado. Ao abrir os compartimentos, tenham em atenção uma possível deslocação das bagagens e confirmem, por favor, que levam todos os vossos objetos pessoais. Chamamos a sua atenção para o facto de só ser permitido fumar no terminal do aeroporto e nas áreas designadas para esse efeito. Foi um prazer tê-los connosco e esperamos que voltem a voar com o Airlines e AZORES Airlines. Em nome do Comandante Paulo Vila, Sr. de Relação, queremos desejar-lhes dia, um bom regresso a casa. Boa tarde e muito obrigado. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the United States of America. We have just landed at the Oakland International Airport. The local time is 6 p.m. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until the sign has been turned off and the aircraft has come to a complete stop. Please be careful when opening the overhead windows, like it may have moved. When leaving the aircraft, ensure that...
Now, for those of you guys that watch the flight out to the Azores, you'll know that we are actually going to disembark from Gate 1 at Oakland, which is the only gate at Oakland that's connected to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So that's where we're going to arrive, and it is actually a little bit further out, you can see from the rest of the terminal, in order to fit that U.S. Customs. Now, global entry was shut at Oakland, which was unfortunate. I couldn't take advantage of that. So was the mobile passport line. So everyone had to go through the exact same line, which just made this take a while. The backup actually extended all the way into the jet bridge and all the way back into the airplane. Now, what I did notice in this time is that everyone was just kind of talking to each other, and from what I picked up, it seems like the island of TER is actually a pretty small community, as well as the Azorean population of California, and it seemed like a lot of people actually knew other people on this flight. Finally, through customs, we headed to the baggage claim designated to the international flights. Picked up my bag. There is actually an additional screening if you do have anything to declare. Otherwise, you pass through one last door and you're back into the open in Oakland. But anyway, thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the return flight of this journey. This journey was a ton of fun for me because in all honesty, I've been wanting to do it for a while. I had no idea what to expect, and it was a great adventure. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more.